Artists, will you please turn your easels?
Wow.
Oh, wow. You can look now.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Oh my God!
Wow.
Wow.
This is bizarre. I'm to go and see a plastic surgeon.
Well, indeed. Thank you very much indeed for coming and helping us to mark 10 years of this series. First of all, I'd just like to welcome you and also welcome, or I gather, a lot of people watching online. I've just been told in my ear that it's reached 1 million, which is very encouraging. Let me introduce the panel. Next to me is Danielle Graham, who was the first series editor of Portrait Artist of the Year, is now one of the exec producers. Next to her is Sam Richards, who was a founding director of the company and here from the very start. Nelda Sale, who's the series editor, joined us as a producer-director and has been looking after doing all the hard work for the last few years. And don't know who that chap at the end is, Belega Jones, who also, is the director of Sky Arts, but was in at the very beginning when we commissioned the thing. So all of you who work in independent production companies know that what you need more than anything else if you're an independent production company is a returning series. And when we were thinking about this, we had done quite a lot of work for Sky Arts. We'd made the book show for a few years. But most recently, a number of us have been involved in coverage of the Anthony Gormley project in Trafalgar Square. Do you remember the fourth plinth where he got a whole load of members of the public to be on the plinth for 45 minutes? And we did the coverage of that, and it was deemed to be a great success. At the time, Sky Arts was a paid channel. It was in a sort of package that made it really quite difficult to find. And so the fact that it was in public was a very important thing. You'd see people walking past the event and you could see them saying, "Oh, Sky Arts," didn't realise that Sky had an arts channel, thought they were all sport and movies. So this was a very important aspect of the thing. So when we started to think about the format that we could pitch, one of the things that we were sure of was that it needed to be in public. Another thing that Sky Arts, I think, attached a lot of importance to is that they didn't want to just point cameras at art. They wanted television to some way add to the thing. And also they were keen to do something that had some legacy that would underpin Sky Arts' position as part of the arts community in the country. So our very first document that we wrote, I think the other thing they had said was it needs to be ambitious. So our very first document it involved a huge screen that we would put up in Trafalgar Square. I think we said that Michael Jackson would be our first sitter and that 500 artists would all gather in the square. We'd then sort of run the competition and the winner in the end would win a £10,000 commission to paint a portrait that would end up in the National Portrait Gallery. That was enough, I think, to get Sky Arts' attention. They said, let us know more. So we went to see the director of the National Portrait Gallery, Sandy Nairn at the time, who was obviously very enthusiastic about anything that would get more conversation going about portraiture, but very sceptical about whether something of this could work, particularly whether anybody could do anything worthwhile in the 4 hours that we had in mind that would work for the format. I mean, as it's turned out, as often as 4 hours isn't enough, it's too much because people can end up overworking their paintings. The next thing that we wanted to do was to cast the hosts. And we wanted to send signals that it had would have credibility in the arts community, but also that it was accessible. It wasn't just something for people with degrees in art. So Joan Bakewell's been a friend of mine for about 45 years. And when we suggested Joan, everybody thought it was a good idea, but a number of people pointed out that Joan at the time was 80 years old. We said at that time, and yes, and our ambition is to still be employing her when she's 90 years old. Alongside Joan, we wanted somebody else who would send a signal that this was accessible. And Frank Skinner's name came up, and obviously Frank is very, very funny and very, very quick, but not sort of scary. We thought his presence there would send a signal that this was a program for everybody. So we enjoyed getting Frank and Joan together. Frank told me later that he had said yes to the meeting because he wanted to see the words "Lunch Joan Bakewell" written in his diary. So when we had all these things together, we went back to Sky and said, we've got all these ingredients together. At that time, obviously, it was a very ambitious idea. And there was a lot of skepticism, it's fair to say. But Phil was certainly a champion of it from the beginning. But there was some senior person in there who said, let's get this straight. Are you really asking us to entertain people by asking them to watch paint dry? I've never named that person because I'm always hoping that it's a good blackmail opportunity, some further, if it should be needed further down the line. But just in case watching people paint was not going to be as thrilling as we hoped it would be, we threw everything at the first series, and it did indeed take place in Trafalgar Square. We had 3 marquees, 21 artists, and there were a whole load of sideshows of cartoons and caricatures and everything you could think of to make it go with the zing. And that first episode looked something like this.
Hello, we're here in Trafalgar Square in the heart of London to launch a very special arts competition.
Over the next 6 weeks, we'll be travelling across Britain and Ireland in search of a fresh new artistic talent. Welcome to the very first Sky Arts Portrait Artist of the Year.
When I was at art college, it took weeks sometimes to get it right.
You serious?
Yeah. So let's get on with it.
We've only got 4 hours.
I know.
Artists, it's time to put down your paintbrushes.
Wow.
The winner is...
Well, that's a nostalgia fest. That was series 1. It's quite interesting, actually, seeing Robert Lindsay there saying, you've only got 4 hours, because I would say that was one of the biggest obstacles we had when we were trying to hone this format. We worked on the development of this for probably about at least 8 months, and we talked to artists, and we were very keen to make something that was celebrated real artistic talent and wasn't just a sort of lesson in speed painting. A lot of artists said to us, you'll never make anything meaningful in 4 hours. A lot of people from the art world said, that's incredibly reductive. The people in this room know that television is by its very nature reductive, but we did think they had a point. We thought there actually was something, we did want to make sure that we attracted great judges to it and attracted great artists. And we had a problem, which is, we don't want to just show who can paint the fastest, we want to show really good art. And we came up with an idea, which we still use to this day, which was to get people to enter with a self-portrait. Those who are chosen to take part in the heats, we put the self-portrait up on the walls. And then we used that self-portrait as part of the judging process. And for us, that's really key because, you know, there are two things that you're able to do there. You're able to show the process, which is fascinating. I mean, we used time-lapse cameras. In that first series, we used 3 time-lapse cameras. And it was so fascinating watching the paintings come together that we decided that actually we're going to time-lapse all the paintings. And we've been doing that ever since. And it's one of the key parts. But crucially, the judging process involves the self-portrait that they have done in their own time. And, you know, we built in further aspects, which is we had at the semi-final stage, we had the artists go and take on commissions in their own time. So by the time we got to the final, the judges were choosing art based on a real body of work. You know, it wasn't just, you know, speed painting. And that was really key to us because we really wanted to celebrate properly good art. The other thing that we were really keen on is to make a programme where art was accessible to all, but intelligent. And that was a key sort of thing that we wanted to do right from the beginning. And one of the ways we did that was to employ judges who talked about art in an accessible way. We didn't want to employ judges who, you know, sort of said it works for me on 4 levels, and then they sort of, you know, give obscure art history references. We know that actually sometimes, you know, art galleries can be quite intimidating places, and television's a very levelling medium. We were really clear that we wanted to find judges who could talk accessibly, but knew their stuff. We probably screen tested about 50 judges, I think, you know, curators, art dealers, painters. And I remember when we realised we struck gold when we first met Taishan Shirenberg, who those of you who know the programme know that he is our artist practitioner judge. We had a fantastic AP on the programme called Tess Small, who came to us with Ty's paintings and told us that he won the BP Portrait Award, and we were intrigued enough. And Tess and I went to meet him in his studio in Camden, and it took about 10 minutes for us to realise that, you know, this guy was going to be TV gold. Not just because he's charismatic and charming and talented, but also because he had that thing where every emotion that he thinks and feels is writ large on his face. He can't hide it. And like for TV producers, that's like gold. This guy is going to be great. So we had Ty, I think he was our first judge. And actually we struggled a bit to find a woman for a while. We were looking at 3 male judges and that just wasn't going to happen. So we just kept looking. And a fantastic producer that we work with called Anne Ellison, she moves in quite highfalutin circles. She went to a private dinner at the Royal Academy, as you do, and saw Kathleen Soriano giving a talk. Kathleen Soriano at that point was the director of exhibitions at the Royal Academy. And she said that she was really articulate but really funny, and that was really, you know, that spoke to us. We screen tested her. She was brilliant. She was quite blue chip, you know, being the director of exhibitions at the Royal Academy. She also had a background at the National Portrait Gallery. So for us, it was, you know, it was a job to persuade her. She didn't want to be part of something that felt like it was dumbing down art. And actually, of course, you know, what I was talking about before, I think really helped persuade her that this wasn't a speed painting competition. So we had 2 judges and we were looking for a third, and Kate Bryan at the time was head of contemporary at the Fine Arts Society, and Rocio Cano, who I think might be here, but anyway, she came to us and said, I've just spoken to this woman. She's fantastic because she works at the Fine Arts Society, but she's not like in the gallery because mummy and daddy pay for it. She's from Reading, and she's like really normal. You know, and she's not one of these little posh. Oh, there she is, Rocio. Just giving you a name check. I was just going to say, you know, so that really, we were really attracted to that. Rocio went and filmed Kate on a phone, no expense spared. And she got her to look at a painting and to talk about the painting. And the shot was of Kate. And when Rocio brought it back, I was like, oh my God, I just want to see that painting. She described it in such a great way. There was no sort of, you know, there was no showing off about what it reminded her of. It was really engaging, really charming, and I really wanted to see the painting. Rossio didn't get a cutaway, so I wasn't able to actually. But it just made me think she will be fantastic. So we put the three of them together, and all of us execs here sort of, watched them, watch their chemistry, and I think it goes without saying that we knew. I mean, Kathleen and Ty had a kind of relationship already because Ty had won the BP Portrait Award when Kathleen was at the National Portrait Gallery. But Kate was a great addition, and they're still going strong to this day. I mean, they were quite green around the gills then. They hadn't actually done much television. I think they'd done a few interviews here and there, so they needed quite a lot of producing. But these days, I mean, they're sort of like, do you want it in 20 seconds or 30 seconds? So we're still very pleased with them. We think they did a good job. The other thing we were really keen to do is think about who do we want to enter this competition. We want it to be a competition that everyone can enter. There were quite a lot of competitions at the time looking for amateur this, the best amateur baker, the best amateur. And we decided really early on that we were going to go for amateurs and professionals. There are a couple of reasons for that. One was that in the art world, it's quite nebulous, the description professional, because there's a very fine line between making money from art and not. A lot of very good artists don't make much money, but it was more than that. We wanted to ensure that anybody could enter, somebody who had been working at it for years and had a reputation, or somebody who dabbled on a Sunday. And that was one of the really key parts that we put into the competition process. We made sure that we asked everyone to apply with a digital image. We had 1,850 entrants that first year. And we didn't tell our judges, and we still don't, anything about the artist. They had no idea whether they went to the Slade and got a first, or whether they worked in a supermarket in Bognor Regis. And actually what was brilliant about that was that in that first series, we had a call centre worker called Kevin from Cleethorpes who painted Alison Steadman, and she chose the painting. It was a beautiful piece of pop art. And that continues to this day. And I mean, it sets us apart. We don't actually ask people their backstories. It is all about the art for us, and it's all about talent. And that was a gamble, and it was one that paid off because actually, artists are intrinsically interesting people. So I do think that has paid off, but it was a bit of a gamble. And the last thing to say is that in the first series, we travelled to England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. You saw Trafalgar Square there. We went all over. We had Irish celebrities in Ireland and Welsh celebrities in Wales. And in the second series, we had Landscape Art of the Year commissioned. And at that point, we realised that was going to get us around the country. And we actually decided to double the amount of heats and find a permanent home in London. We started filming at the Wallace Collection, which is, as most of you probably know, a beautiful gallery behind Selfridges, but it's also got a really nice space where they normally have their cafe, and they let us use that for a good couple of years. And I think we've got a VT to show that.
Hello and welcome to Joan Bakewell's garden. Now we're actually in the Wallace collection.
Welcome to the Wallace Collection, where among the old masters we've gathered 9 eager artists, all hoping to create their own masterpiece today.
I'm moving house. Would you come and heft a few sofas?
This is really scary.
So the next challenge for us was, who are they going to paint? And this was particularly tricky in the first series because Danielle and I spent quite a great deal of time trying to persuade 3 sitters to come to Trafalgar Square and have their portrait painted over the course of one day. And at this point, there was absolutely no proof of concept. So we had made a decision as a production company right from the beginning that we wanted to set the bar really high. In the same way we had that purist idea of we wanted to attract great artists, amateur or professional. We wanted to give them sitters who were also kind of great, creatives in their own fields. But trying to, ring agents and say, we're going to, do this painting competition. Will your client come and sit in the marquee in Trafalgar Square for 6 hours and be painted? Well, why would you? So we ended up kind of pulling in favours of agents we knew. And Danielle and I actually had to go to Robert Lindsay's house and explain to him what we were doing and just please trust us. And it was remarkable that we actually got, so the first episode, Alison Steadman, Robert Lindsay and Juliet Stevenson, and she brought her son along. And we were so lucky that these people trusted us, and that kind of set the bar, because then over the kind of next few seasons, what tends to happen is the people that are sitters, they have a lovely day, because most of them are really, really well known in their own fields. And it's not like, will you come to this press junket and talk about your film or your book or what have you? It's like, would you like to come and spend the day with Joan Bakewell in the presence of these 3 amazing judges and be painted by 3 incredible artists? You'll have a lovely day and you can choose your favourite portrait. I mean, what's not to like? So this has kind of gone on, and what's happened over the years is the agents really love the show because their clients go back and say, wow, that was great. And, Juliet Stevenson said it was like creating a relationship with, how many artists did we have in those days? 8?
No, and 7 in each one, 21 altogether.
So each sitter had 7 people painting them. And she said it was like creating a silent relationship with seven kind of different people. And it's a very enjoyable experience for those of you who watch the show. It's a collaborative thing between the sitter and the artist. And so in the first few years, it was hard though, really trying to kind of curate, and it's a collaboration with the channel and with our team of who we want and why we want these people, and putting out bids for the ones we want. And that all worked really well, and we've had amazing sitters over the years who we just feel so lucky that they just love this show. But then when the channel went free to air, as the series evolves, the audience is more diverse and it's different. And also as the show evolves over the last decade, social media has become, just so much, just burgeoned massively and is part of everybody's life. So, the pool that we kind of look in every year is a blend of who is top of their game, who will serve this part of the audience, who will serve that part. So Joe Sugg, for example, he's probably a sitter that we would not necessarily have looked at 10 years ago, but he's kind of the bullseye now for us for so many reasons. And he was a lovely sitter. So and then the commissions are very much based. So each year, for those of you who don't know, the winning artist wins a £10,000 commission to paint a well-known person for usually an august institution, and that has been galleries all around the country. And so that often it's which comes first, the sitter or the institution, and that's very often dependent on the agents and who we're dealing with. So Graham Norton, we'd wanted him for a long time, and his agent was a big fan of the show, so it was an easy ask. And so you get Graham Norton and then you go to the National Gallery of Ireland. Sometimes with Tom Jones, we went to the National Museum of Wales first and said, would you like to do this with us? And then they give you a short list, of people who they've never had and they want. And then someone like Niall Rogers, who was a subject for a winning commission one year, he doesn't necessarily fit into a national gallery. So where is an institution that does resonate? And he has a long relationship with the Royal Albert Hall. And also it's important for us and for the channel that these commissions hang in public spaces where after the show has finished airing, people can go and enjoy them. And what has been wonderful in the last couple of years, and particularly this 10th year, is with the reopening of the National Portrait Gallery about 18 months ago, it was an opportunity for us to ring them and say, hey, do you want to kind of, get into a relationship again? Because in the first few years, and actually every year, even though we filmed at the Wallace, we would film our final at the National Portrait Gallery. But we'd never actually had a commission there. But there was a change of guard and a change of lots of things. And also it speaks the way the show has evolved, from that scepticism of what can be achieved in a day. Portrait Artist of the Year is now something in the art world that artists see as a serious competition and want to enter. And we have BP award-winning and other award-winning artists. So they said, yes, we would love for the winning commission to come here. And they were curating this new space. And so it was Lenny Henry last year, and we're about to do the unveiling of our winning artist this year, next week at the National Portrait Gallery. And so that has just been an absolute joy in the 10th year to be doing that. And then, of course, reuniting our previous winning artist to paint Judi Dench. And those portraits are now on display there. So we now feel like Judi Dench has done it. We'll the sky's the limit.
Michael Jackson.
So it's just a very interesting kind of curation and evolution, because you have the people who are enduring, just national treasures and top of their game who you want every year. And some years, depending on what's going on with them, you can't have them. And then you wait long enough and they say yes. And in fact, you were saying today, Daniel May's Line of Duty, we'd had Vicky McClure and we'd had Adrian Dunbar and lovely...
Martin Compton.
No, see, you forget, they've had so many. But Liverpudlian, just amazing actor. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
And so Danny Mays, when he came onto the set, he was like, they're in the green room at Line of Duty, and he's like, why haven't I been asked? And so that's really nice. So it's lovely that we get to that point where people are now like, could I do your show? Which is really great. So that's the casting part of it, the sitters casting part of it.
And that took us into Battersea. So can we run that?
Hello, we are thrilled to greet you from our new home at the Battersea Arts Centre, which has hosted everything from radical thinkers to beatboxers.
So you should be able to handle a few artists.
But can today's artists handle the Battersea Arts Centre and the challenges we've set them?
I'm very excited.
And begin.
Yes, so we left the Wallace collection then for the last 4 years. The Battersea Arts Centre has been our home. I've had one child. I thought I'd just talk about, building on some of the things that Danielle spoke about and Sam. So while portrait's popularity means that we get lots of applicants each year, and it's regarded highly amongst artists, we don't rest on our laurels. We still put a lot of effort into outreach. Now, I call it outreach and not casting. I'm a freelancer. I've worked on other competition shows where we cast for characters, outlandish characters. With portraits, as Dan said, we choose artists based on their art. And it seems like a minor point, but actually makes a great difference to the integrity of this as an art competition show. And I know artists really highly, think highly of that. And it does, of course, present a bit of a challenge when other shows you've screen tested contributors, but both on portrait and landscape, I worked on landscape as well, you often get artists who, until they come on the day, that's the first time we see what they perform like in front of the cameras. And you can have really timid, artists who don't know what to say. So as producers, we have to use our full arsenal of PD charm and skill to get useful answers out of them. And I like it. I say to the team, I think it's a challenge, and it's rewarding when it works. It is a whoop moment when you get an artist who's got like naturally witty upsync. You're like, yes, we go there. Anyway, so when it comes to outreach at Storyvault, we're looking for quality, not quantity. And we quite like the personal touch, I'd like to say. And I've got an amazing team who we like to liaise as much as we can directly with artists. So we use lots of different ways to outreach to artists. And we cast our net far and wide. And one thing is we like to try and increase the diversity of artists. And often some of these artists might feel a bit intimidated about entering our competition, the whole art elitism sort of argument. But we think it's really important to democratise art. So this is where the team start engaging and liaising, communicating whilst we're doing this outreach. So I have an AP communicating with an artist on Instagram, and obviously people are a bit anxious and nervous and they'll ask us lots of questions. So we just keep that communication going. And so we're really proud actually that over the years, every year we get greater numbers of diversity. That's, I think, really important to us. It's very well done us. That says we've got great relationships with art schools and institutions, and we've got a long-standing partnership with Cass Art. So this all helps us to reach artists through their database and so forth. So I just thought that's how we reach out to different artists. And actually, by the way, last year we only had one returning artist, and she hadn't been in the programme for 8 years. So, I read on socials, there's this sort of argument that we get a lot of returning artists. That, actually it's not strictly the case anymore. So a little bit more about our application process. We have a call for entry right now, actually, if anyone's interested, Series 11. So that's open for 4 months. People apply by filling out an application form, submitting a self-portrait, as Danielle said. They also have the option to submit 1 or 2 other pieces of art, which the judges can refer to when they're trying to make a decision. And so people, we use Cast at Reach. It's a platform that's really helped us out, actually, because we used to have to manually do a lot of things, but Cast at Reach is really handy for us. It allows us to also keep an eye on things like, we need probably to cast a little bit more for outreach, a bit more for diversity, or perhaps some artists with disability. So once people have applied and we close our entry, what happens next is that our judges independently conduct a pre-whittle. So they do that digitally, and we can have up to a couple of thousand artists applications that they go through, and then each of them choose about about 150 to 200 artists, so that by the end of the pre-whittle process, we're left with about 700 artists. We then have a whittle, which all 3 judges are with us. It used to be in real life, but since lockdown, we now do it where they zoom in, but we're all in a room. And we go through all the 700 applicants. And there's often universal agreement. They'll go, yeah, that artist's brilliant in. It gets a bit fruity when there's disagreement, and sometimes some judges have to sort of argue why they want that artist to go in. But yeah, it's a very fair process. And so by the end of the whittle day, we're left with, so depending on how many heats we have each year, we either need 63 or 72 artists. But by the end of the Whittle, we have 150 or 110 artists, just because inevitably we get dropouts, and then we also need to get reserves from that. But anyway, so once these people are chosen, it's the best bit of the job is calling them up to say you're in. Over the years, we've had lots of tears of joy, so that's rewarding. Then what we have to do, as you can imagine, over the years we've had hundreds of different artists, but what the team now focus on is trying to find the USP of each artist. So it's really important for us to treat each artist as individuals. So we do lots of research, then we find out. Then it comes to the heat day. So one thing that's really important to us is, as production, it could just easily be another shoot day, but for these artists, it's a huge deal. It's such a special day for them, and inevitably they're all really nervous and anxious. So we think it's so important to make them feel special as well. From the minute they arrive at Battersea Arts Centre, they're greeted by a member of production. Throughout the day, there's a dedicated artist runner. They want a coffee, they get a coffee. And then we also have an art team that, if they need their water refilled, they get that. If they've forgotten their black paint, there's a spare tube of paint. And we just really look after them. Plus, the editorial team, who've developed a rapport with them leading up to the shoot day, they're on hand. And so anyway, the point is, artists have a really good day because we put a lot of effort in making sure they have a really great day. We get lots of feedback from artists afterwards, sending us, because I sound like I'm patting myself on the back here, but we do get feedback where they say they've had a really great day, being treated well, it's professional and enjoyable, which is great. Because we do know that the art world is so big, so artists talk amongst each other, and it's important to us that there's good word spoken about their experience with us. The only other thing I was really going to say is, so we've always, after a shoot, we check in. We used to send APs, assistant producers, used to send a text, but as the climate in television, contributor care is really important. And in the last 2 years, we've really put a lot of focus on it. We have a dedicated production member who, after the shoot, gives them a call. And I just thought that was really, really important because, as we've said, it's a huge day. It's super intense. There's filming going on. They've got so many emotions going on, and just text was fine. But now they get one-on-one phone call. They can give feedback, and I think that's helped us develop this fantastic rapport. And over the years, we've got lovely friendships with lots of the artists, and that's important because before you know it, a decade's gone.
Tonight, we've got a very special programme celebrating 10 years of Portrait Artist of the Year.
Our winners will go head-to-head for the very first time.
Welcome to Portrait Artist of the Decade. You have 4 hours to capture Judi Dench, and your time starts now. Your time is up.
What am I to do? They are fantastic, I think.
Isn't that wonderful? And you can see all 10 Judys in the National Portrait Gallery now if you want to go and see 10 Judys. They're there, aren't they?
They are.
So this has been really interesting for me, actually, because looking back at that, and looking back at the Trafalgar Square thing, I'm reminded, and something you said, Stuart, that it wasn't necessarily an easy commission, this, was it? From a channel perspective. You think, you know, programs like this, that, you know, they're landed, they're always going to be like that. It was always going to be a great success. But it was a very difficult thing to get off the ground in the first place. It was when I started Sky in 2012, it was as a commissioning editor across entertainment. It was one of the first things that came across my desk. It was this in a show called John Bishop's Only Joking. And I commissioned both of them. One of them is still with us, and it's this one. But we did have that kind of slightly sticky thing because remember there was a bit in the proposal about hanging in the National Portrait Gallery, which is why we had to go and see Sandy Nairn. Sky was in a very different place then too. You know, there was some skepticism about our ability to do arts. There was still a kind of sense that this was we were going to sort of Americanize everything. There was a kind of Murdoch-y kind of toxicity around it as well, which sort of didn't help. And I remember we went to, you and me and James, wasn't it, Stuart? We went to have a cup of tea with Sandy Nairn in the National Portrait Gallery. And I prefer to say we didn't come away feeling optimistic that we were going to permanently be in their collection. But after the end of the first series, they hung the portraits, didn't they, temporarily in the downstairs bit of the portrait gallery. And I think they saw their footfall go up by,
5,000 a week.
5,000 a week. So that proved, I think, to them and to us that there was something in this. And then it's fair to say the first series, you know, it was a success, but it wasn't like a ratings-busting mega beast, was it? And then I had the job of trying to get it recommissioned at Sky, and that equally wasn't easy. I remember at the time, the same person that suggested that watching paint dry wasn't a good idea sort of said to me, well, that was good. You're not going to do that again, though, are you? That's right, okay. Really want to. And, you know, but we had some supportive people there and we managed to get the second series and the sort of rest is history. But, you know, but I kind of, you know, in terms of where it sits in the channel, you know, it's undoubtedly portrait artists and landscape artists of the year are our tentpole shows. They're the shows that kind of define the tone for the channel. We have a kind of little sort of slightly silly motto that, you know, we take art seriously, but we wear it lightly. And I think portrait artists and landscape artists do that very well. Stuart talked about the need to have credibility mixed with accessibility, and Danielle talked about that too. And it's a fine line to tread, you know, because you want your discerning viewer of the arts channel to come in and appreciate what you're doing from a kind of an expert point of view, if you like. But you also want people who are maybe less familiar with something to find a way into it. And I think this program sort of demonstrates that in spades. And that's you know, something that we sort of use, I guess, when we're talking to other producers as well about the kind of tone we want to adopt. And I always remember actually as well, it's funny, you get little memories just watching that. I remember the very first commission was Nick Lord won, didn't he, the first season? And his commission was to paint the late Hilary Mantel, which now hangs in the portrait library. The
British Library.
There's no such thing. The British Library, sorry. Yeah. And that was an incredibly proud moment. And that speaks to another thing that is very important for us, is that, you know, we think Sky Arts is sort of unique in the portfolio of Sky Channel, certainly, is that we're the only channel that can sort of go beyond television and have a presence in the real world. And partly that's leaving things behind, like the Hilary Mantel portrait or Graham Norton in the National Gallery of Ireland. And we've got 3 portraits in the National Portrait Gallery of Scotland, haven't we? We've got Nicola Benedetti, Helen Cumming,
and Emily Sonday's in there as well.
So it's leaving something behind there, but also actually, you know, certainly when we toured it and when we tour Landscape Arts of the Year, we're out there meeting our viewers, our customers. None of the other channels do that. So it's a very important thing for us because there are 3 pillars to our activity. You know, we want to drive participation in the arts and not just have it as a kind of passive experience, because you make a much deeper connection with your audiences when you can join in. And so doing this is ultimate in sort of participatory program with the concerts equally. Accessibility is an important thing for us. And again, like Danielle said, it doesn't mean sort of dumbing programs down and making them silly. You know, the biggest thing we did to make the arts more accessible was take the channel free to air and give people sort of credible but entertaining arts product. And the other thing that, again, Nelda alluded to is the idea of inclusivity. So spreading the love around. We want everybody to be able to join in and I think that, again, it sort of leads the way for that too. So I think that's pretty much sums up why this is our favourite programme, and we love working with you guys. The other thing, I tell you what, one thing I always remember as well is the first viewing. And a first viewing of a programme is a nightmare for everybody, isn't it? Everybody hates their viewing. Everybody hates the editors shitting a brick. The commissioner, oh God, this is going to be awful. And I remember the one note I gave, because it was a brilliant programme, was just, can I see more of the painting? That was the only note I had to give. Remember vividly that at the time. Just let me see more of that. And you've done such a brilliant job of it over the years, casting it, again, credibly. It's not about sort of loud, mad characters. It's about people that are really good at something, doing something really well, and that is incredibly entertaining television.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, everybody. I think we've got some time for some questions, and I should just say that the other two founding directors of Storybook Films, David Buckley, who's our director of production, and Southern Morris, who directs the series and has from the beginning, are also here, so they can participate in answering questions if you have any. As you have probably gathered, it's an enormous pleasure and privilege to make this series. And absolutely the best thing about it is that when you're out and about in landscapes or in portraits, on a very regular basis, you'll find yourself talking to an artist, and they will have appeared in the series 6 or 7 years ago, probably not even won their heat, and they'll say, I've never stopped working from that day to this, which is a kind of fantastic thing, because the most difficult thing facing artists is getting their work seen. And if they get seen on the programme by 1 million people, a small proportion of those will love that particular artist, and they'll look them down and they'll commission them. And to have turned literally scores and probably hundreds of amateur artists into professional artists feels like a fantastic payoff for what's already anyway a joy to be able to do. So, that's us.
I'm going to start off with one question. Can you explain how many cameras and so on, and how much footage you end up with, and how long does it take to edit it down to one show? Because I've been to a recording, you've got 9 time lapses and all that. So,
It's not.
Yeah.
Stuart, you can answer that for me.
Come on, Southern.
Southern hates talking in public, but just give us a number. So
7 cameras.
7 cameras and all the time lapse.
9 time lapses.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I mean, it is, the great thing is we are able to make this show in the way that we want to make it, and thanks to the support that we get from the channel. I mean, that's, as everybody here who works in our business knows, that's a very, very difficult thing to achieve now. But it's, obviously I attend every recording, and when you see the rough cut, the fact that there is no moment when somebody refers to something that's happened or a stage in a painting or something, and you don't see it, I mean, it never happens. So it's a lot of footage, and it takes a lot of editing, but we feel that's what makes it really special. So.
Thanks so much. Andrew Eagle on Octopus TV. Many congratulations on 10 years. Brilliant, brilliant series. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned over those 10 years? And how do you see the next 10 years?
Small question.
Who's there? Judi Dench.
Do you know what? We, as somebody said before, we don't rest on our laurels. I mean, it's been very successful, and we are absolutely thrilled. But at the end of every season, we sit down with the whole team and go through the programme, literally shot by shot, and say, why are we doing it that way? Is that quite right? Is that just working? And so we make small changes, in many cases, that people won't notice. I think that interesting that Phil should say his first note was see more painting, because actually that's the note we give ourselves every single season. And obviously one of the things you want to do more than anything else is get the viewer rooting for a particular artist. In order to be able to do that, they've got to be able to associate that particular artist with the painting. There's quite a lot of art going on, so just making sure you're always joining up, this is the progress of this piece of work with this particular artist, is a very important thing.
It's not a lesson, but there's something that I feel quite proud of in the programme, is that we are one of the sort of few programmes on television where introverts can apply, talented introverts. You know, in television, and I mean, I've made programmes like this myself, you know, we're guilty of kind of always looking for characters and, like, you know, people that you would want to sit next to at a dinner party, you know, but that we watch from behind the sofa with like morbid fascination. But there's something quite nice, and I feel I've got introvert friends who say, oh, it's really nice just watching talent, you know, and not actually needing to, you know, for them to have a kind of, you know, big personality and a sort of, you know, a sob story, backstory. So it's just something I think done well.
And we're talking to Phil right now about the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Go for it. It makes my life easier.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about it, actually, funny, I always think is it's incredibly interesting how different all the portraits are. You're looking at the same. We were all looking at you, but we're all seeing something very, very different, I'm sure. And if we were sort of rendering it in paint, we could do that, it would be enough. It's always a bit surprising. And it's never the same, you know. So I think that's a real strength.
It literally is the thing that makes it endlessly fascinating. That everybody's looking at the same thing, and one person starts with a little pencil thing and spends the first half an hour doing something the size of a postage stamp. Somebody else gets an emulsion brush with sort of bright purple and starts doing it. Everybody's looking at the same, and of course that's the joy of art. So it just does make it endlessly fascinating.
I always come back to these things, you know, the best of those programs, don't they? I think apply this to maybe Bake Off and things like that, is watching people who are good at something doing something really well is actually really rather entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, and with something we can aspire to, talk about aspirational television, I think that's a good example.
Yeah, process.
Yeah,
it's like why the repair shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, it was more of a request, actually.
You want your portrait painted?
You put your forward me.
You wait for the microphone.
Yeah, sorry, it's more of a request, actually. I've watched every programme pretty much. I think it's an amazing show. I've always wanted to see, apart from the few I've seen hanging in situ, any chance of curating a 10-year anniversary exhibition?
You can take it.
Yeah, well, I referred earlier to our relationship that we now have with the National Portrait Gallery, and their sponsor was no longer since they've reopened. And about 3 months ago, they approached us and said, we would love to give over the gallery next year for an exhibition with you guys. It didn't come as far as your ears, because there was a caveat, which was, we really want to do this because they had a gap in their sponsorship, and we had a lovely exhibition that Kathleen Soriano curated, Compton Verney, last year, and they loved that, and it was like, could we do something like that at the National Portrait Gallery? And it was all very exciting, and they just kind of came to us with this, and we said, yeah, and they were like, well, we've got to have some internal conversations, but it's good to know. And in the meantime, they've got their new sponsor. So that then kind of blew that out of the water. But there was a moment where we were poised to ring up Phil and say, we're going to do this like 6-month exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery. So
might still happen.
But we did do that last year, the year before last, at Compton Verney, and got a lot of the most successful and outstanding artists back, and it was fabulous. I mean, it was just so. I mean, it's great that you've seen so many series, but actually, it is when you see all that representations of it together, you realise the kind of accumulation of what it's really meant to the art world and art community, and I mean, people in the National Portrait Gallery, that they are routinely saying that the series has changed the nature of the conversation about portraiture, and who would have thought that you'd be able to stimulate all these discussions. I don't know whether they're going on in sort of pubs and clubs, but, you know, you shout at the telly. It doesn't even look like him. You know, we always said we know this is going to be accessible for the same reason that there's always a queue outside Madame Tussauds, because you don't have to be clever to be able to say it doesn't even look like them. I always watch the programs and watch Twitter at the same time, and they start off in the evening saying, my favourite time of the week, feet up, glass of wine, and I know that for the next hour nothing unpleasant is going to happen. And I always know, of course, if it's going to be a controversial choice by the judges. So they're enjoying it. It's 35 minutes in, and then you see, what? The judges should have gone to Specsavers. And I always think, well, if you don't agree with the judges, it only spoils the last 5 minutes. But I think shout at the telly is a great thing to aspire to.
But just touching on what Nell was saying about outreach, we're always open to collaborating with institutions if there's an opportunity that we kind of think, oh, we could create an exhibition here, or people coming to us. So it's like everything, it's a question of timing, but yes, hopefully you'll see more exhibitions in the future.
Any other questions? And there's one at the back there.
Hi, Stuart. I feel a little bit more nervous than I normally do at an RTS event, because I'm about to utter a phrase I haven't used for 24 years. On behalf of my wife and I, we're both huge fans of the show, and it's one of the few kind of co-viewing programmes in our household. And we've watched it from the early days at Trafalgar Square through to Battersea Arts Centre. And I think it has been remarkably well curated on and off screen by the production company and by the channel. So congratulations to all involved throughout that decade. I am a little curious about why you think the format doesn't seem to have travelled internationally as well as a format that's already been referenced a couple of times, Bake Off, if we're going to use the talent analogy. Is that because other territories have similar overlapping shows, Indigenous shows of their own? Does it say something about the British audience compared to other territories? And I believe there is going to be a Norwegian variation coming soon. I assume they've consulted with you. Are there any format changes that they are introducing for the Scandinavian market? Thank you.
I'll let Danielle talk about Norway. So there's been a Danish format, and it's been very successful there, and they paused it for a year, and it's coming back. Emily here from Banijay, who can help me with the gaps. We have an amazing sales team at Banijay with the taped sale and the formats. So the Scandi countries are coming on board. It was Denmark first and now Norway. We had Landscape Artists of the Year format in Canada. I've spent some time out in the States trying to sell the format to America. This touches on what Nelda was saying about, and Danielle, insofar as we don't cast out artists. We've spent many years kind of trying to convince, international kind of channels that this is not a kind of, niche art show, but it is a kind of shout at the telly, entertainment, broad viewing, competition format. What it isn't, though, is full of, people's backstories and all that kind of high octane stuff. So in America, for example, there really aren't any kind of mainstream channels where this title would fit, because we're not Cake Boss. It's not that very high octane, high drama, which is what is that's a la mode at the moment. And equally, the syndicated channels or the smaller niche arts channels don't have the money to make the format, but we've sold the tape show there to an arts channel called Ovation for many years. The Australians and in New Zealand, where they're very, very keen, and that's. But again, I think
But they've got the actual show.
They've got the tape shows, but they're interested now in the formats. I think the other thing is, it's about volume. What we know about formats is proof of concept, and the more you have, the nearer it becomes to selling the format. And I think we're in that territory now with a lot of discussions that are going on with international buyers. So we have sold our show all over the world, but the format thing has been a lot slower. For example, Canada did landscape for obvious reasons, but they did it in a very strange way. They did it in a paddock.
Yeah, just in
all their amazing landscapes. They did it in a farm, in a paddock. It was really bizarre. But Dan, you can. The first series of the format of Portrait in Denmark. What your brilliant sales team will say to you. They want to marry you with production companies who you kind of get to audition, and if you like their vibe and that you understand that they want to make the kind of show with the same integrity and the same ideas that we have, but they know their market. So once you do the format, they might say, well, we don't want a semi-final or a final, we want to go straight to this. So that was the case in Denmark. They kind of changed the format up a little bit. And again, in Norway, it was different again.
Yeah, just to say, I went over to oversee Norway, doing our format, and it was funny actually, because there was a Norwegian Stephen Magan, with curly haired comedian, and there was a Norwegian girl, but they were very faithful to the format as we have it, and they were big fans, and I think it's looking good. Am I right for a second series?
Very, very good for second series. And I think that both Norway and Denmark doing brilliantly for younger viewers, which is really, really interesting. Both on the public broadcasters and those markets.
And we are determined to get it to the States and places. I think, Emily, we talk a lot about, we might have to, the model probably would be, you all have seen our celebrity portrait artists of the year, to do it that way round, where we would get very high profile American celebrities who paint and introduce it as potentially a one-off, and then they like that and then roll it out.
But American programs are very highly produced, aren't they? Lots, quite.
That's odd.
Yeah, right.
Producers.
Yeah, we've just got a few minutes left. A couple more questions. Was there a question in the middle there?
Yes. You mentioned that when you narrow the artists down, there comes a point where you look for the USP, and then there's a period of, you said, research. Could you elaborate on how you then get it from 700 to 100 and then make the phone call?
The judges make the decisions based entirely on the art. When Nelda's talking about research, it's just really a long conversation with the artist, so we get to know them, so that they feel relaxed, so that when we're briefing the judges and the presenters about interviewing them, if there's a particular sort of story that they want to tell, or some aspect of maybe they just took up painting after they retired or something of the kind. So it's really to kind of get those stories. What we're never doing is looking for, I really need to win this because my grandma died last year and is looking down on me, and sort of X Factor sort of stuff.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say congratulations. I didn't know about the show until, because I'm a student, I'm studying a diploma in factual development and the production in RTS. So I was given an assignment to create an art show, and then this lovely show popped up. I know, like, wow. Oh. So in view of that, I'm just, I did well in the assignment anyway. So I'm just wondering, what's the next big thing in terms of you looking as a company? Do you want to explore other ideas, probably for younger viewers in art? Because I've got something you might be interested in. I'm putting my hands up. I'm not telling it myself. But thank you, well done. Amazing show.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so. In common with every production company, we are obsessed with new ideas and new stories, and always interested in developing new ideas and Phil knows because he has to reject about 99 for everyone he doesn't see. But we keep them coming.
Yeah.
So thank you for your kind remarks about the show. We'd be delighted to hear your ideas.
Obviously, during the past 10 years, the You Know What raised its head, and you re-engineered yourselves to be Portrait Artist of the Week. Do you want to talk very briefly about that?
Yeah, it was just such a godsend for all of us, actually, not just the artists. I mean, we suddenly had this international community of artists painting all over the world for 4 hours on a Sunday morning. But it was a godsend for those of us who made it from our living rooms and who were going mad like everyone else. I think one of our producers said it's the first programme she's made without having to wear a bra. But it was just something joyful about it, actually, because it was on Facebook for 3 hours. Those of you who don't know, we did a live paint-along on a Sunday morning when it became clear we weren't going to be able to make Portrait Artist of the Year. We had a live paint-along. People joined in via Facebook. We had a celebrity sitting in their home, and we had one of our past artists painting. It was kind of like a painting masterclass led by one of our previous Portrait Artists of the Year and sometimes heat winners. It went to 3 series across 3 lockdowns. And it was one of the most joyful programmes to make, because it's very rare that you get to see your audience react like that, and to see so many people. I mean, we had 35,000 entrants on Instagram to Portrait Artist of the Week. We would live ring them, just it's fun doing live anyway, and Joan's little kind of mistakes were part of the joy, sorry, that's my phone ringing. It was just great fun. There was something very Heath Robinson and very enjoyable about the whole thing. And since we've been making the programme IRL again, we've had so many artists saying to us that it kept them going, and it was a total godsend. And actually we had one person win their heat who had never painted before learning via Portrait Artist of the Week. So it's been an incredibly rewarding and fantastic programme, and we're all very proud of it. Thank you.
And actually the nicest thing about it for me was when you were watching it and people said, hello, we're just joining from Sydney. Hello, we're joining from Ottawa, just one after another. Yeah. But the greatest thing is, obviously, at that point, everybody's pioneering the technology. It's a very new technology. And the first person you see pop up in her living room is 86-year-old Joan Bakewell, who says hello to the world. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, joyful.
Thank you for that question. And that appears to be it. Thank you very much indeed to everybody for coming. Thank you to my distinguished colleagues here. And it's been a joy, and thanks very much indeed.